John Luskier of Lusk Archery Adventures. Serious testing, successful hunting. Well, it's a new year, thank God, 2021. And with it being a new year, I have some new broadhead tests that I want to introduce. I've updated my whole testing process. And so I want to explain it here in this video that I post at the start of the year. That way anyone can reference it throughout the year rather than me having to explain it each time I test a different broadhead. It'll all be right here. And thank you all for the input that you've given. Many of you have given great suggestions on tests that I could do. Some of them I've been able to incorporate. Some of them I can't quite incorporate yet, but thank you for the input just the same. So I want to explain how the testing process is going to work. Some tests are going to be the same. Some are going to be tweaked, and then some new ones are going to be added. And so before I go through the tests, I want to make a few general comments about them. First, I understand that pretty much any broadhead can kill an animal. I've taken hundreds of different animals with my bow over the years, and some of those with really cheap broadheads in the early days, so I well understand that. But second, not all broadheads are equally lethal. Some are just more lethal than others. There's no doubt about that, especially when it comes to a shot that's less than perfect. So my tests are designed to provide data points that can be used to compare one broadhead to another. I know they're not perfect tests, but they are pretty uniform, so they provide helpful comparative data. That's the whole goal. I often get suggestions that I should test all the heads on animals or animal parts. I've even had people say, well, why don't you just go pick up road kills and shoot through them? I'm like, are you kidding me? Okay, honestly, that's just not practical. I love to test heads, and I test so many different heads, about 70 different broadheads last year. Now, I love testing them in the field. I take about 10 to 20 animals typically in a given year, but I test a lot more heads than I do harvest animals, so it's just not practical. But then, honestly, I don't even want to use animals or animal parts in these tests because that wouldn't provide useful comparative data. Bone and tissue densities and geometries vary so much that the test just couldn't possibly be uniform. So these tests, while not perfect at replicating exactly what happens on an animal, they do provide a means to compare different heads in characteristics that are crucial to hunting. And I can say with confidence that if a head performs well in these tests, it will likely perform well on an animal also. So here are the tests that I'm going to be using for 2021. First, the flight test. This is going to remain the same. Shooting a balloon at 70 yards. No tuning, just screw on the head and shoot away. And then it's graded, the flight and the flight forgiveness, the accuracy, on a scale of 1 to 10. Next is the edge sharpness retention test. This is going to be modified. I'll continue to use the push paper test where I push a piece of paper over the edge of the blade to see if it cuts. But in 2020, every head I tested out of the package cut paper initially. So I'm not going to be doing that anymore, okay? But I will be increasing the challenge to edge retention. See, edge retention is crucial to maximizing tissue cutting and bloodletting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stroke the edge of each broadhead with this shaft, with the Easton hex shaft. For whatever reason, this has just proven to be a really good test of how well an edge can be held by a broadhead. But I'm going to be doing it differently. I'm going to stroke each edge of the blade twice. And then I'm going to do a push paper test. And if it passes through that, it's going to get 2 points. Then I'll stroke it twice more and do another push paper test. If it cuts, then it'll get another 2 points. And I'll do that up to a maximum of 5 times or 10 strokes of the arrow this year. So that'll be a good test, and it'll get a maximum of 10 points. Next is the penetration test. This is going to remain the same. 2/3 of an inch of rubber foam mat, surrounding a 1/2 inch of medium density fiberboard, MDF, followed by clear ballistics FBI grade gel. Okay, the hide is simulated by the rubber foam mat, bone is simulated by the MDF, and tissue is simulated by the gel. Okay, it's not perfect, but it is a pretty useful test to measure the penetration. And then what I'll do is I'll just measure that penetration in inches like I have been. That's going to be called the penetration test 1. Now on the score sheet, I record the penetration in inches, like I said, and I also multiply that by the total cut size of the broadhead. So you can see what I call total tissue cut score. It's the total penetration multiplied by the inches of cut on the broadhead, giving you the total tissue score. So that kind of evens out whether a head is really small and penetrates well, or whether it's really big and doesn't penetrate quite as well. But I'm also adding an additional penetration test that I'm calling penetration test 2, and that is layered cardboard. Okay, I have it stacked right here. It's an extremely uniform medium, and it has different properties than the gel does. Gel tends to stick to the blades and to the shaft. It's still a good test to do, and you can see it in the clear gel, but the cardboard's just going to perform a little bit differently. So it's another way to test the penetration. And I'll also be using that cardboard test to measure the rotation of a single bevel head from the first layer to the last. So by pulling out those layers, I can measure that rotation really effectively. Okay, I even got a protractor, okay, that I'm going to use to measure the degrees of rotation for single bevel heads. Then durability test. Okay, this test will basically remain the same, but I've added a little bit to it. It's going to test both the edge durability as well as the structural durability of a head. Up to 5 shots into a 22 gauge steel plate. Okay, here's the steel plate. That's for fixed blade heads. Or I use a 1/2 inch layer of MDF for mechanical heads. And for each shot it makes it through without damage, it'll get 2 points. But I'm also adding a spin test, okay? I'm adding a spin test after I shoot it through the steel. And so that's going to show the structural durability a bit more effectively. And so I'm going to be given a score in the durability test for edge durability and for structural durability. Next, I'm also adding back in my zero penetration test, backed by popular demand, okay? 1 shot into cinder block with an exam and a spin test afterwards. And then it's scored on a scale of 1 to 10 based on how well it did. This is really a great test to see just how tough a head is. And it's fun to watch. And I'll be honest, I love using bishop archery arrows, because they don't blow up on me and I can keep using them over and over. This year for this test, I'm going to be using the FAD eliminator. It's called the Firearms Dispatch Eliminator. Okay, you don't need to have an animal dispatch with a firearm if you use this broadhead. Okay, the FAD eliminator is what it's called. And then I'm also adding a new test, a new score for ease of sharpening. On a scale of 1 to 10, just how easy are these broadheads to sharpen? Again, all of these tests are designed to provide comparative data. I know a head can kill a deer without making it through steel plate 5 times and holding up to a cinder block. I well understand that. So these are not pass-fail tests, but they're just data points for comparison. That way, you can use the scores to help determine which heads will give you the biggest bang for your buck and work best in your setup and the animal you're pursuing in your hunting needs. If you'd like me to test a certain broadhead, please feel free to make that suggestion. But I would ask that first you search for it on YouTube, okay? Just go to YouTube in the search bar and type in the name of the broadhead and then Lesk Archery Adventures, and if I've tested it, it'll come up. And if I haven't tested it and you'd like me to test a certain head, it would be really helpful if you'd consider donating a pack of heads. I need 3 new heads in order to test them. A lot of people did that in 2020, and I'm so grateful for it. It was really helpful. I've spent literally thousands of dollars in the last few years just on broadhead testing, okay, and on the broadheads themselves. So yeah, I'm trying to cut back on that with all the other supplies and everything else that I do. It costs so much money. So that would be really helpful if you could could donate a pack. Also, if you're a manufacturer, please consider donating me a pack of your heads, any of your heads, to test as well. I've included my mailing address in the description of this video so you can send them to me if you're interested in that. Please feel free to make any comments or suggestions below in this video. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Hit the thumbs up button there and hit the bell so you can be alerted whenever I post a new video. I'm going to be posting a lot of new videos in the new year, so that'll just alert you. And please also share my channel with your friends and your family. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all your support, and happy hunting in 2021.